Introduce our friends, Teema and Mathew. They're joining from Dallas. I think most of you know them. For those of you who don't know them, um, Teema was a Jesus Youth full-timer, and Mathew was a Focus missionary who continued to work with Focus for several years after his missionary commitment years. They've been married for more than 7 years. In fact, they're celebrating their 8th wedding anniversary next month. They're parents to 3 kids, baby Hope in heaven, Isaiah 3 years old, and Joshua 2 years old. Their commitment to the Lord as a family has been such a inspiration to me for several reasons. But when we were praying about who to invite for this particular topic of personal prayer in as a family, first couple that came to our mind was them. So I really believe the Lord led us to you to talk to us about this. So I'm so glad that you're joining us. So with that, thank you, Teema and Mathew. Take it away.
Sorry, that's you just.
Thank you, Sharon. So great to be with you, all of you. First of all, just to pray with the Lord. I think especially during this time, it's been wonderful. Thank you, David, for leading us in that prayer. If you're not, turn on your camera. Really encourage you to do so. I think it's all so great for all of us to see each other. So really appreciate if you are able to do that. But I do want to start with a story, and it's a story from pretty close to 8 years ago when we were newly married. We had finished our honeymoon. We used to live in Colorado, so we literally got home, and so it's about a week after our marriage, and I put my luggage on the bed and starts unpacking. And Teema asked, like, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I always unpack right after a trip." Now she's like, "Why are you putting the luggage on the bed?" And I'm like, hadn't thought about anywhere else throughout my life. Always just put the luggage on the bed and unpack. I don't have to bend down. It always made sense to me, right? Well, and as you can probably, most of you can assume, Teema was like, "What? Where has the luggage been? Where has it touched? Where has it been?" And
You're dragging it all over the airport, all over the world, and then you're putting it on the bed that we sleep on. Like, imagine the number of germs.
Hadn't ever passed my thought ever, but. And I share that story, fortunately I don't think that we didn't end up in a fight then. We were still newly married. But in that context, we just want to share how different we are. I mean, how we are different. And I think that's probably the case for, for all of you as well, right? You didn't marry yourself, you married someone else. And that someone, you often say, right? I mean, you've heard probably many times is your path to heaven. And in this conversation, in this dialogue, what we share is our experiences that we hope are of help, but it is a journey together, and we are here to learn from you, and hope you have something to learn from us as well. But kind of going back to that initial stages of our marriage, right? I mean, I see some newly marrieds, and probably folks that have been married for 7 years as well. So all along that journey, what we have found, right, and that initially, right, I remember being newly married and kind of thinking and talking to Teema about, so what does it mean to grow closer together to God, as a couple? How does that change, or what is different? And I remember thinking, and we were just grappling with it, right? And it wasn't like we had an answer. And after kind of some time, and I think one of the things that came to us pretty clearly was that similar to a house, right? There's a foundation for our spiritual life, and that is our personal prayer. That is our personal time with the Lord, and that we needed to continue to do that. Now, building on top of that personal prayer, a time with the Lord, our personal relationship with the Lord, at least for us, is a different spirituality, our family's spirituality. But I think it's important that the family spirituality is built upon our own individual intimacy with the Lord. And as we were kind of looking at that, and I think Teema is going to talk a little bit more about, the family spirituality. But for us, I'm going to focus initially on maybe that personal time with the Lord, which, as David said, throughout his prayer, live a life less ordinary, live a life extraordinary. It's a song from Carbon Leaf. And I remember singing that song, live a life less extraordinary. But how do we do that? When our days are, look very similar to each other. I recall one time a priest telling me, there's only so many ways you can sin, but saints, there are infinite number of saints and a patron saint of everything, right? You probably have, there's a patron saint for everything. And I think we have the opportunity to be saints as families, and to be that. So for us, what's worked for us in that journey to sainthood, well, very far from it, but is we both try, make it a priority to spend our personal time with the Lord and try to facilitate those opportunities for each other, right? So, with the 2 toddlers under 3 years old, for us, it just worked first thing in the morning, right? We both get up and, spend some time just in silent prayer. I just happen to, very practically speaking, right, I get up and just pray right then and there, because I know our days get going and we may not ever get that time again. And as you may look, we came from different contexts, right? So Teema grew up in Jesus Youth, was heavily involved in Sierra Malabar. I grew up, after college, I did Focus and was formed by Focus. I, my spirituality sometime, I attended Opus Dei. So we come from different perspectives, but again, of course, running toward the same Lord, and the Lord speaks to us, but just slightly different. So having that time is always kind of been our time with the Lord and our intimacy, right? And I remember in our first year of marriage, and often thereafter again, but remember that first time, I remember thinking, Lord, if Teema loves me so much, how much more do you love me? How much more does the Lord love me? And I often think of that, especially as a dad too, if I love my son in such imperfect ways, how much more does the Father love me? For that time of intimacy with the Lord, that's kind of the foundation, right? But building on that foundation, we've been blessed with a spiritual director here. It's been phases throughout our life. They've not always been a spiritual director, but it's been so wonderful to have that spiritual director to provide us guidance, to provide us direction. And also, I think one of the component has been, so one thing I should say, we were married for 4 or 5 years before we were able to have children. So in that initial years, we had a lot more time. So we were able to attend a couples retreat and maybe then a personal retreat, had the time for that. While, 2 kids under 3, those times don't come very easily. So we have to make it a priority. And I think one of the things we strive to do is provide opportunities for each other to spend that time with the Lord. For us, we are blessed to have a Jesuit retreat center here. So for a couple of days, to really go focus and spend time with the Lord. That's again, I think, an area of real focus for us. And on a day-to-day basis, right? How does that look? Is really continuing to serve each other, right? And I often say, right, is it hard? I remember last time Teema was on a retreat, I took the boys out to a play park or something and ran into some others we knew, and they were like, "Oh my gosh, it's so hard to be just with the boys." And my context was not really, because and maybe it's selfish, but the Teema that comes back from a retreat is a more holier Teema. But also, while we spend that time in prayer, but there's also reflection on our marriage. So she comes back as a better wife too, So I think it's important for us, and at least I should speak for ourselves. It's important for us to really make a solid amount of time, whether that's on a day-to-day basis in prayer, in spiritual direction, in retreat, so that is kind of the foundation with which we build our family spirituality on. Because I kind of just, I guess, again, really just sharing back on that. I don't think it's a coincidence that there have been so many married saints that have been brought up and canonized in the church, right? So Louis and Zélie Martin. But just I think there will be many more, because I think our world needs it. And I am confident, right, in this group right here, we have the opportunity for us to be saints together, I don't know, Saint Anu and Saint Thompson, right, together, right? Or Saint Jitan and Yami, right? I mean, just those are the ways that we will transform the world. So I think we have the great opportunity for us to be saints together, but that all begins with our personal time with the Lord. Anything more you want to add?
I think on an individual basis, and I'm going to talk about it a little bit more when in just a few minutes too, but what is it that I think, especially for those who are newly married, maybe especially those who are just establishing your marriages together, I think it's easier if you establish those practices of prayer for yourselves now than waiting till later. You will notice in your family prayer or in your family of spirituality that those things will change. But it really is, I think we need to own our own time of prayers, and we need to be able to, as Vinu said, be able to provide that for our spouses with each other. And in many ways, I think, Vinu and I had already had established prayer life in our lives before we were married. In many ways, we were both morning people. We always prayed in the morning, and that's continued, till now. There was definitely a phase when we first had kids, and it was just, especially not having children, when we were battling infertility for a number of years. And then, kids thrown in the mix, we were just like, okay, what do we do? Type thing. So there was, we had a time of figuring out again, where does prayer fit in this, or how do we manage this, or where do we find time for it? So I think even with that, like going into our family spirituality, I think the beautiful part about our Catholic faith, about family life, is that saints look so different from each other. For me, I always think about it when I see something on social media, or I just see another family and I see something beautiful and I want that. But I think, comparison is also the thief of joy. God is calling us in so many different ways, and our families in so many different ways. What works for John and Liddy may not work for us. What God is calling Sharon and Seben to do as a mission together as a family, he might not be calling us to do. But I think it is important that we draw on the inspiration from each other and the ways that we are growing in holiness. So in our family life, we've had, as we already mentioned, we've had different phases. For almost 5 years, it was just the two of us. So we had a lot more time. We had committed to a weekly holy hour together at our parish. We were running our CIA at our parish together. There was so much more things that we can do outside of our home. And that was a beautiful time for us. And a lot of our time was spent with other families from our parish, observing JY families, observing Focus families. And we learned so much. We learned about their holiness. They challenged us. In fact, we were even inspired. We started making our family journal. And this is just something for us. We observed so many families. And we wrote about, what has inspired us? How do we grow in prayer and virtue that we've seen in other families, that we would like to adopt in our family sometime? Important family practices, things how we focus on our marriage, what our goals and things are to grow our children in virtue and holiness. And we review this once in a while. We try to bring it into our daily lives, but that's just one practice that we've kind of brought with us as we have observed so many families during that time that we had that time to focus. And even if obviously children are so resilient and are so flexible, so that should always continue. And we desire to always continue that, to be inspired and challenged by other families. I think to live in a community in some way, either whether it's your parish or if it's through a Jesus Youth community or another community that might be near you. When we were in Colorado, our parish was run through another movement, and there were so many families that inspired us, that challenged us, inspired us with their simplicity. There was a family that inspired us by living, very close. They made a lot more money, but they lived very close to the poverty line, and they gave the rest of their money away. Things like that really challenged us in so many ways, to go, to ask the Lord what he's calling our family to ask the Lord how to, or just ways that he's inspired us through other families. Also, just in prayer life, how we can grow in prayer with other families. And a lot of that was done for us, at least, while we were in Colorado. And I should talk to the present time too. We're still trying to figure out, where God is calling us to in Dallas. And we feel very unified in the fact that God is calling us to do things together. We are from two different ministries. I was formed in Jesus Youth. Vinu was formed largely through Focus and Opus Dei. But we feel that God is calling us together in some way. And we're not sure where that is here yet. So we're still in a discernment phase on that. But there are many ways where we keep in touch with families that we really grew with. So there's accountability there. One of the great things that Vinu has always inspired me with, he has a group of men, all of them are married men and fathers, who have been meeting for more than 10 years now, every other Friday morning. So they all jump on a call every other Friday. I believe they discuss the gospel, they share with each other, they keep each other accountable. It was just a beautiful group, which I would say probably all of them are his closest friends as well in all these number of years. For 10 years, they've been doing this. And I think that community, I've seen Vinu flourish in. And from that, and from those gatherings, there's also so many inspirations for our own family. One of the things that we do as a family every year, Vinu and I are goal-oriented, a little type A. We like to write things down. Every new year, we discuss our goals, we write them down. But we also have something that for the past 4 to 5 years that we've been doing together, and we call it our family rally cry. We think and pray before the new year begins. What is God calling us to this year? What does he want us to focus on, to grow in? Like, for example, in 2020, there was a number of health issues that I've been going through. Vinu has some cholesterol. So one of the things that some of the things that we are focusing on this year is our health, being more generous, so generosity, embracing Dallas. So embracing more of growing here within Dallas. And the last thing is apostolic authenticity. So I just wanted to give you an idea of what a rally cry for our family means. And again, this looks different for everyone, right? We are just sharing what has been helpful to us. Family practices that inspire us and help us to kind of have a mission or a goal or something that we bring to prayer in constantly throughout this year. Another thing that has helped us, as I mentioned earlier, is friendship, true virtuous friendship. I think as we get older, it's harder to make close friends, just the nature of it. As you get older, you need more time to spend with people. As you have more kids, it's even harder to spend time with people just because of the nature of children's schedules and things like that. So unless you're in close proximity with those who you're close with, it's a little bit difficult to make friendships. So a lot of the times right now, we keep in touch with our friends from Colorado or from when we were younger. And we're hoping that we can build greater friendships and greater community here in Dallas. I think it's kind of funny that we put embracing Dallas in our 2020 rally cry, and in March we started the lockdown. So we haven't been able to do too much outside of the home, but in our hearts, there is that prayer and that desire. And I think that in itself has changed us in many ways.
And I think we're all different, right? I mean, even the fact that we said, kind of Teema said, we are kind of schedule-driven people, for us, right? I mean, that the kids' schedule or drive a lot of our schedule as well. And we think, it's really important for them. It helps them, and which I think helps us. But that then, limits our availability. I think there are more families that are more creative with that, and we have great respect for them. But we kind of have to figure out for for each individual family what works for you. One of the things that I don't like to admit it, but I've kind of admit that I kind of need my sleep. Right? I mean, I remember being young and being able to go on 5 hours of sleep for like just easy, no problem, right? I mean, but that's not the case anymore. And and I guess kind of maybe just adding to what Teema said, and that family spirituality is also knowing us, and that grace, right? That grace builds on virtue. And that virtue is, when I don't get enough sleep, I'm just more cranky, and Teema knows it. And right at the start of the day, it doesn't take very far for Teema to see that. And I don't want to be that, right? So we have to set ourselves up for success in those virtuous things, right? What are those habits that we need to develop that will help us grow as a family, but also in our personal time?
I just also want to reiterate the part about families being in different phases. And I think that's important because I think we need to reevaluate at different phases in our life what is working for us. There's a number of years I was able to pray for almost like 45 minutes. I went to daily mass. We had a weekly holy hour. Those things were amazing and magnificent. They do not work for me right now. And God has called me in different ways. My altar is different. And this phase in my life, I miss going to daily mass. Yes, absolutely. But God is calling me to something different now. And my personal prayer is shorter. My rosary is when I'm putting the boys to sleep for their nap time. What is God calling us in this phase of our life? What is it that I can do? Yes, when we were single, or maybe when we were first newly married, we had the time to pray for an hour. But maybe when you have 3, 4, or 5 kids, that might not look the same. So it's really important to know and not feel guilty about, okay, I was doing that, but I can't do that now. What is God calling us to in this phase in our life and in this phase as a family? Anything else that you want to add?
No, and I think one of the other ways, I think the Lord the Lord brings two of us together, right? And the Lord has, I think, as I was kind of reflecting on what, we know the Lord has picked a specific person for a specific reason to be a spouse. And I think that is because the Lord, right, Teema is my path to heaven. But it's more than just path to heaven. Teema's presence, right? The Teema, one of the things I particularly call out, right? Teema's confidence in the Lord. I think her utmost trust as God's daughter. She will often say, I'm God's favorite, right? And so much so, I'll give my intentions to her to pray for specific intentions to pray for because she's God's favorite. I am convicted that confidence, that inspires me, but just because of the way I grew up and just different, all the different contexts, right? It is a particular avenue for our Lord to call me to heaven. So as we as we continue to look at your spouses and what are the specific avenues for the Lord, your spouse, all of our spouses inspire each other, but also the specific avenues by which the Lord, we all have our wounds, and I'm convicted that our spouse was put in our heart, in our lives, to heal some of those wounds. And that's why I guess practically speaking, I think we have to say that on the other side as well, right? We are imperfect. We have hurt each other, but you know, let's let's always be generous with praises, and when we do hurt each other, let's be quick to forgive. Let's it's not always easy, and for those folks who've been married longer, that, right? But let's, even if it takes some time for that initial forgiveness, let's not carry that bitterness past that. I think there have been few times where we kind of called that, and again, really inviting the Lord for that healing, so that we can really build that. We can be saints together. And yeah, I think that's one of the things we pray in family prayers, that we may be, that our family may be a saint. The Syriac family would be a saints together.
Yeah, I think today's theme is encouragement and encouraging each other, and I think it's really apt, especially for our time. This unique situation that we're in, this unique time that none of us could have ever imagined would be happening in our lifetimes, is happening, and I think this encouragement is really needed within our family life, amongst spouses, amongst our family, but also for each other. I think Vinu has inspired me in many ways. Like when many times I actually look at him when he prays, and because we're sitting next to each other, and he is actually having a conversation. Like his eyes are closed, but you can see he's like speaking. Maybe not, he's not obviously speaking out loud, but I see the vigor in which he speaks, and that has inspired me so much, that his intimacy with the Lord is so animated, and that the Lord speaks to him. And many times, it might not be right away after prayer, but sometime during the day, many times he says, God was really telling me this today in prayer. I was thinking about this. And that leads into something for our family. Again, I mentioned about his friendships, and how much, that iron sharpening iron is so important. And how Vinu also shared, when I go away for a retreat, or when I spend time with people, we always come back, refreshed and also refilled. And I've seen that with Vinu. Like, I know that he needs time with his guy friends, not just to like have guy time, but to really, a lot of his friendships are very virtuous, and it brings so much life into our family life and into our marriage. So being aware of what your spouse needs, and perhaps, making a channel or a path or an avenue for them to be able to do that. Even though it is extra tiring to have, the kids for a weekend, or whatever the sacrifice might be, it's always something where a family, I think, grows in those instances. But we just want to end with, that encouragement. Let's encourage each other. Let's build up each other. Yes, we can always despair on, the things that are lacking, or how our prayer life can be better. But let's move forward and pick ourselves up and encourage each other. So we're in this journey together. So many of you are inspirations for us, the way that many of you disciple other young people, the time that you spend with other families and with other young people, the radical choices that many of you have made. So thank you also for encouraging us. Back to you, Sharon and Seven, or maybe Melvin and Sneha.
Thank you, Teema. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Vinu. Thank you for this beautiful sharing. I think surely, we have always, we have been enriched by whatever you have, spoke. Especially, I think I'll take one of the things that I will take from Vinu is the men's group. That is something maybe I'll probably, take and see if I can, coordinate something. So it's beautiful to see the way, as a family, you have been able to, foster a personal relationship with Christ, right? So thank you for that. And Selvin, over to you.
All right.